Hello, I'm Keira, and I'm brain damaged. Shouldn't laugh about that really. I suppose it's not really a laughing matter, but it is what it is. I'm 3 years, 4 months into my brain damaged life. The speech impediment is nothing to do with the stroke. It's because I have this thing in my mouth for my braces, which I shall now remove. So don't worry if you've had a stroke like I've had. Chances are you may have braces. That's better. It's so crazy that it makes a world of difference. I keep taking the thing out because it's been in for a year and it's driving me insane, but that's not the purpose of this video. Here we go. I have to find the term. I only recently discovered this. I have issues with technology. Wow, it's like one of the puzzles with the small metal balls in. Wow. Okay, it's going to annoy me now. Oh, that was a little whistle. Didn't know I could whistle. It's probably all the gaps between my teeth where they've been moving about. Okay. On the 17th of February 2020, I was given an apology by a hospital employee because they told me I had had a stroke in my occipital lobe. It turns out I didn't just have a problem with my occipital lobe, but also the, I always say this word wrong, now I'm going to get it right, the parietal lobe of my brain. So effectively the parietal occipital region of my brain got mashed, and I was less than impressed by that news, which I discovered years after the fact. So the purpose of this video is to tell you about my journey and hopefully reassure you that it isn't all doom and gloom. So what happened on the 16th of February 2020, I was cleaning out my pet rabbits. They're not my pet rabbits, obviously, they're the children's, but you do the work, so that's how it goes. I was cleaning out the rabbit hutch crouched on the floor for quite a considerable time. Then I stood up and lost my vision. Like a screen, a black screen, just came completely over everything I could see. And I couldn't see anything for quite a while. At the time, the children were 10 and 11, something like that. So very much, can you get me type thing, which they consistently did while I couldn't see anything. Can you please make my lunch? No, I can't see anything at the moment. Why can't you see? I've no idea. I can't see. I just assumed I'd stood up too quickly because I know that can happen. I was just like, wow, this is going on for quite a while. Anyway, eventually my vision came back, or so I thought at the time. I was like, oh well, okay, off we go then. Back on with stuff. And I then got my kids to look at my eyeballs. For some reason, I was like, can you look at my eyes so they look normal? And they laughed because I had a giant pupil and a small pupil. I had Ren and Stimpy eyeballs, as I called it. Now, I found it hilarious. Took a picture of it, and I was like, I should probably go and see a doctor. So this was the weekend, thankfully. So the next day, I went to the walk-in place and was like, I lost my vision yesterday and this happened with my eyeballs. And the guy was horrified. I was like, what's your problem? He said, did you have a headache? I was like, no. And he said, well, if you didn't have a migraine, which I would expect you to have some pain with, I think you just had a TIA, or a mini stroke as it's known, and you need to get to A&E straight away, and you can't drive there, and you need to get there now. I was like, okay, if you're sure. So I called my sister and said, apparently I've had a mini stroke and I need to go to A&E. Can you please take me, because apparently I'm not allowed to drive. So she did. She whizzed me straight up there, went to the hospital, explained to them what happened. I forgot to show them the picture of my eyeballs, but that shouldn't have really mattered because I've been sent there by a doctor. They laughed at me and said, go and take a seat in minor injuries. So I did. And then 6 hours later, I was then told I'd had a stroke. I was like, oh, okay. Well, there was a point at the hospital where I literally thought I was going to eat the pavement, but I just assumed I'd been sat down for too long, got up to walk, and then again was just like changing blood pressure. I'm going to hit the deck. I didn't, so I was like, cool. But that was obviously, I'm guessing, the point at which my brain broke. I don't remember having the MRI scan, but apparently I walked from minor injuries all the way to the MRI scanner, which was a completely separate part of the hospital grounds, had conversations with people. My sister was there the whole time. I remember nothing. I don't remember speaking with anybody. I don't remember having my brain scanned. I don't remember walking back to minor injuries. All I remember is sitting in the waiting area being like, this is a waste of time. Then having a kind of a moment where I thought I was going to hit the deck. And then being told, oh, you come in this room, lay on the bed. And I'm like, what do I want to lay on the bed for? I'm fine, sort of thing. And that's when they said, oh, I'm sorry, you've had a stroke and your occipital lobe is broken. So they stuck me in a bed for the night. And then the next day I went home, kind of thinking everything was all right. Just felt a bit tired, really. But, you know, when you're stuck in a room with people in their 80s and they're all kinds of messed up and you've not had a day to yourself for forever, you're like, I'll catch up on my sleep while I'm here. That's what I thought I was doing. I was like, brilliant, this is like a little weekend away type thing. So my best friend came and picked me up, took me home, and it was at that point when I got home that I realised that actually something was actually significantly wrong. And I haven't been able to find any information about this type of stroke on YouTube or via Google, really, outside of very rudimentary information. So I figured that this might actually come in handy for somebody who's had the same sort of stroke as me, or maybe a friend or family member who is like, Jesus Christ, what's up with that person? So my recovery went as follows, or like my impairments became apparent as follows. I could not stay awake for a day. I couldn't stay awake for more than a few hours. I essentially felt narcoleptic. I was like, I need to sit down for a minute. Bang, next thing, I'm out. Then I wake up, time has passed. Couldn't even tell you how long time had passed, but time had passed. And that would happen daily for weeks and weeks at a time, possibly even months, definitely not longer than a year. And I was like, Jesus Christ, it was a fatigue like I've never felt before. The closest I can kind of put it to is after you have a baby and you're doing like feeds every 3 or 4 hours, you literally do not feel rested no matter how much sleep that you might actually get. It's very much like that. So that was a bit of a like, Jesus Christ, like, when's this going to end? And I couldn't walk properly. Walking felt like being on an extremely sandy beach, basically sand dunes. Nothing beneath your feet felt the way it used to anywhere. I tripped over everything in the world, including just the floor. That still goes on now, but it's very rare that I actually have a massive issue with hitting the floor, so that's nice. But that went on for months. The region of my brain that got damaged is to the left. So consequently, the right side of my body is the most impaired side. Not so much now, thankfully, although my right foot will sometimes catch the floor. So I still have to make a conscious effort to actually lift the foot while walking or dancing or anything like that. If your head isn't thinking, you need to make sure that thing does that, you're likely going to have a bit of a problem. But like I said, not too bad. There's no horrific injuries, but it's no fun, put it that way. Well, I actually find it kind of funny, but that's just me. Looking at stuff becomes incredibly painful to do. So after I got home, I was like, right, what food have I got in? I need to prepare meals for everybody. What's in the cupboard? So I open up the big cupboard, I look in there, and I'm like, this is too much. There's too much stuff. My brain cannot look at this. There's too much stuff. Shut that cupboard right back up. And people would say to me, just write me a list of what you want from the supermarket and I'll get it for you. I was like, I physically can't, because I can't look at anything and identify what's there. It's painful to look at things, which was very, very bizarre. That's now basically gone, like for like your day-to-day kind of things. I still don't enjoy being in places where I find the colours upsetting, specifically bright pink, just like, oh, is just like, shut your eyes. Like if I look at a screen, for instance, now is a black background, so my brain will be quite settled with that. If there was things behind me, I probably wouldn't even look at the camera for more than 10 seconds. And I have trouble identifying where the camera is, so my eyes will probably dot around all over the place, being like, where's the camera? Where's the camera? Where's the camera? I can't remember. I used to know where it was, obviously, years ago. Not anymore. My brain refuses to relearn exactly where that is, and I don't care about that, so that's fine. I lost the ability to read the English language and anything, which was quite mind-blowing, because I have a degree in English language and literature, and my regular day job was an English teacher. So then to discover that you actually can't read anymore was like, whoa, that's not great. And how did I get around that? Not by reading books, that's for sure. They became the enemy. What I ended up doing was buying a piano and learning to play the piano. Not to a high standard, but I wanted to get my brain to relearn how to read. And I knew that wasn't going to happen by looking at words, because the frustration level was just off the charts. Because when I would be faced with 3-letter words and being like, I don't even know what you are, that's obviously kind of upsetting. It's more frustrating than upsetting, because you're just like, Jesus Christ, like, I know 4-year-olds that could read this. What's wrong with me? You're supposed to be a teacher. Jesus Christ. So I learnt to read music, because I'd never learnt to read music before. So for me, my brain, if it had never done something before, was going to be more inclined to do it, because it didn't feel like trying to regain skills. It was feeling like doing something new. And that then allowed me to then take that and gradually get back into reading. Now, I still can't read the way I used to in any way, shape or form, which is very frustrating. And I won't listen to audiobooks, because I used to love reading and hear the voice of the characters, or my own voice as I'm reading what I'm reading, and I used to love to read out loud, because that was just part of my day job, essentially. So I don't do that anymore. I just choose not to, because it's not the same as it was. But you get around those kind of things. So there's that. The physical recovery, so with regards to being able to move my body. So I could not hold my dog's lead when going out for a walk. So once the crazy, insane tiredness wore off, and I was like, great, I'd like to take my dog for a walk, I then discovered that I couldn't actually hold his dog lead. I would consciously be saying to myself internally, keep hold of the lead, keep hold of the lead. And my hand would not obey at all. So I ended up tying his lead to my wrist, which as a grown-up, kind of a little bit odd, not gonna lie. But it did mean that he could not go free roaming chasing squirrels and me not being able to do anything about it, because my speed at moving was quite tragic. I experienced muscle wastage on the right side of my body. That has never gone back to normal. That will never go back to normal. But how I actually regained the function in my right hand was by doing something incredibly basic. So I have a set of keys. There's maybe a dozen keys on there. I'm not even sure what all of the keys do. I've just collected them over my lifetime. And I would go out for a walk on my own, without the dog, that is, and without other people, because I'm like, I'm working here, like, fuck off. And I would squeeze the keys, because if I drop the keys, it's just the keys, they're not breaking. If I did it with the phone, I would then be upset with myself, because I would have probably killed my phone screen. So I would squeeze the keys. because obviously if you squeeze something hard enough, you will experience pain. And because I had not only just muscle weakness and just complete uselessness in my right arm, I needed to get a response, my brain to register, like it can feel that. Because as time would progress, you wouldn't need to like put a death grip on something in order to hold it. It would become more natural, more like you used to be. And who doesn't want to be like what they used to be? Well, some people don't, but I actually quite like the way I used to be. So, and then once I could master that skill, I then moved on to holding my phone with a screen protector on it, because I'm not silly. And then it would be a case of just squeezing it to get the sensation of like, I am holding my phone, I recognize I am holding my phone is fine in that hand. Then I would move on to like shopping bags, where I would load the lighter one onto my right side, and then I would load the heavier one on until the fatigue was set in. And eventually I moved on to just using small weights, like small dumbbells. I think it's like, it might be £1, it might be £2, but simply to try and get a full range of motion and build back up as much muscle tissue as possible. And the same for my right side on my lower half of my body, on my leg. I have ankle weights, so I would specifically carry out moves that would work the knee joint, the hinge, and the hip joint. So that took, well, that's never properly recovered, but you would have to be staring at me square on to be like, that side's just a little bit smaller, isn't it? Like that sort of thing. Like, that's not quite right. And I started taking supplements, which I'd never done before, but I am now 44, so I was 41 when I actually had the stroke. Is that right? Maybe 42? No, I was 41. So I'm naturally degenerating anyway because I'm middle-aged. So I started to add protein powder to my porridge, which I actually quite love because it's vanilla flavoured. I like that. And obviously that allowed me to get enough protein in me so that when I would then lift weights, I would build muscle and I would focus more attention on the right side than the left side, because I want the right side to catch up with the left side. And I also have recently started taking creatine, again, because I'm degenerating, because I'm middle-aged and my right side is always going to need a bit of a boost. And all of me, quite frankly, because that's middle-aged for you. But those are the things that physically have helped my recovery. And now I'm able to lift weights, to do resistance training, and that has been what has actually helped build the muscle back up, and the walking has built up the coordination. And it's taken easily, well, I'm 3 years in, and people will often say to me if it comes up, I'm like, I've had a stroke, and they're like, you mean a mini stroke? I'm like, no, brain broken kind of stroke. And they're like, well, you don't look like it. And I'm like, nah, I worked hard at that. So fool everybody into thinking that I'm not disabled. What else? Creatine, protein powder, resistance training, walking, keys, phone. Oh, large font. You're going to need everything in massive font, and you're still going to miss stuff. I still miss stuff, which I've got used to. You may also find conversation quite tricky. If you're having a conversation with somebody and somebody kind of butts in over the top, they might just be agreeing with what you're saying. You're likely going to completely lose your train of thought. You're probably going to struggle to get the words out that you want to say. You may say something similar to the one that you mean, but it won't be quite right. You may say the opposite of what you actually mean, and in your brain, you've just said exactly what you meant, and the other person is looking at you like you are crazy. That still happens, not as much. I used to have super hard time talking. Now, I'm a bit of a talker, so that's kind of an issue for me. When I can't get the words out, I'm like, Jesus Christ. Also, you may find that you swear a lot. I do. I don't know if that's because, like, my brain got broken by people being incompetent, or just, like, that language part in my brain is like, we can do all those words, easy peasy, and we're going to do them really loud and often. But, you know, everybody understands those words, so there is that. So what would you be left with? Okay, so you're going to have problems with your language. Your spatial awareness is going to be quite tragic for the rest of your life. So I will often punch things unintentionally because I might be stretching. And I hit my pole the other day. I just feel I just back-fisted that thing. It hurt me, obviously. But I was like, Jesus Christ, this is never going to go away, is it? It won't go away. I headbutt shop windows still, where I will try and look. I'm probably trying to look at a price of something or trying to work out what colour something is, because colours are just a nightmare for me. And I will get so close, I literally bong on the window. You won't be able to read prices on things in shops. I can't anyway. So that's kind of annoying. But shop people will help you if you go, I'm legally blind and I don't know how much that is, or I'm legally blind, I have no idea what size it is, and I can't identify colours correctly, so I have no idea if that is what I think it is or I'm just wrong. That's kind of bad. Writing, you will write in a way that you've never thought possible. You may think you're writing in a completely different language. You're like, well, steady on hand, I don't know what language I'm writing there. And then you try and read it back, and you're like, Jesus Christ, there's letters missing and everything. I'm not even sure that's the English alphabet. That will always happen, but there are ways around it, and we are quite good at adapting. So, for instance, making voice notes on things can be incredibly useful in comparison to a pen and paper. Unless you want to confuse somebody, in which case pen and paper is the way to go. Reading, tragic. You're going to misunderstand things. You're going to misinterpret things. You're going to miss words. The only time I don't have that issue is if I'm working on the stuff that I work on and I'm kind of in fight mode, essentially. If I'm feeling in fight mode, and I'm particularly aggressive in what I do, I will never make a mistake, because I think there must just be something innately kind of cavemanish about the human race still in general, like the basic thing, flight or freeze. Well, when I'm in fight mode, that's it. I'm unstoppable. Nobody's getting anything past me. It won't matter how long I have to take to do something. I'm not missing a goddamn beat. So do channel your fight response in your reading activities, because that will actually be incredibly helpful. And if you're actually kind of more of a pacifist, you need to change that, because you've got a big fight on your hand recovering from a stroke, let alone then trying to do like your day-to-day things and that, or trying to work on stuff. You need that fight response, trust me. That's going to be a massive help to you. And you probably could do with some cheerleaders and that, like, you know, to back you up. I don't really have that. I have people that like to make improper jokes at my expense, which is good because that sets off my fight response. So in effect, they're actually helping me, which is lovely. Calculating stuff, Jesus Christ. Like, that's a challenge. I'm so grateful that I just, like, things that I was doing before the stroke are still things that I'm doing afterwards. So I still eat the same food. I still, like, my kids still do the same activities. I've not had to make any kinds of adjustments. And when there have been adjustments to be made, like somebody's got like a school trip going on where they're going to be away for a few days, and I'm like, right, I've got a budget for that. How do I even calculate? So thankfully, I haven't had to sell a kidney or a teenager yet. So that's good. But yeah, just the everyday like calculations of life become tricky. I was convinced that there were 48 months in 2 years at one point. That was really strange. And nobody could tell me otherwise. I'm like, what the hell are you on about? That's 2 years. And they're like, you're crazy. I'm like, get wrecked. You're nuts. So, but that's just more of a me thing, I think, because I became so accustomed to everybody basically being quite stupid when my brain was fully functioning that part of me is like, I don't accept that I can be wrong. You're mistaken. I'm 100% correct. You should shut up. But those kind of things are actually quite useful and kind of humbling. Not really, I'll never be humble. Self-processing. Self-processing what you're doing, when you're doing it, why you're doing it at that moment in time. The amount of times I've gone to reach into my oven and pull out hot trays with bare hands and been caught out by it. Like, woof, that's a little bit hot. Things like that. Just putting plugs into the walls and that to turn them on while still touching the metal of the plug. Things that you would never do before. Kind of childlike things is the best way to describe it. I still do those things, not as often. Again, over a 3-year period. The first year is definitely the worst year. You're like, Jesus Christ, there's just problem after problem after problem. This kind of feels like it's never going to end. Well, it won't, but it will improve an awful lot. Your working memory can be quite tragic. So, for instance, like, I could just be like on the money on anything, anywhere, anytime. Now, something could catch my eye, and whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing will just go. I'm busy staring at that dog, barking, not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. There's no reason for me to be doing that. My brain is just like, off we go, and I'll completely lose my train of thought. Now, hopefully, whoever I'm actually communicating with will have been paying attention and can remind me what we were talking about so I can get back on track. If they weren't, then that's unfortunate. And we just laugh about that. And we're like, well, you should pay attention because you know I have brain damage. So there we go. Your musical memory. Now, this is where I've discovered this just yesterday from when I actually got to see a neurologist and discover all the things that were wrong with me and how things have like moved on and what I did to actually move things along and stuff like that. My musical memory is fantastic for listening to music and picking up beats. It's fantastic. I never really paid it much attention before my brain got broken, but because of the region of the brain that's affected, I think I get so much enjoyment out of music because the other parts are so much more impaired. And if you can do something and you're good at it, you'll keep doing it. So I'm just a simple creature. So I love dancing now. I've done chair dancing, I've done pole dancing, and I love them both because you get to connect the movement of your body with the sound of the music and you pick up the rhythm. And that just seems to kind of like feed the brain and be like, we can do more. And then I'll be like, okay, I shall do some work because I've just danced for an hour. I can face that machine. Let me at it. Equally, you may experience ADHD-like symptoms and that, where you just cannot bring yourself to do something. I've had instances where I could have people holding a knife to my throat. I'm like, sorry, that's not happening today. I can't do it. And they'll find it really bizarre because you may have been the sort of person that was just like, right, there's the list of what needs to be done. Let's just get cracking on it. Now you'll find yourself being like, I've got this appointment today, therefore I now cannot do anything else related to my home life. I cannot take care of anything outside of this one thing. And if you happen to then find out that your appointment that you're supposed to be like having suddenly gets cancelled, that's it. You still can't do anything because that was supposed to happen and you'll get insanely angry over it because you're like, well, I've been planning for that and I've avoided doing 7,000 other things for this and now you've cancelled it. So very much ADHD-like symptoms, but it does give you a kind of an insight into somebody with a diagnosed ADHD. It's like, Jesus Christ, that really isn't fun. I don't take any medication for that at the moment, but it was only yesterday that I discovered all these things and everything. So I'm hoping I might be able to get some Adderall, and perhaps that may kind of knock that out. It may not, because obviously I was left for so long without any kind of professional help. That might not do anything, but I have to now wait for another appointment to find out if we can just drug me up and fix other parts of me. You will struggle to recognize objects and faces of people that you know. If you see somebody in a environment which you wouldn't normally see them in, and they say hello to you, you will look at them being like, I have no idea who you are. That happens to me often. It used to happen to me before I had a stroke. They'd be like, hi, Keira. And I'm like, hello. They're like, you don't recognise me, do you? I'm like, huh? It's so-and-so. Oh, okay, cool. I'm like, how the hell did you recognise me? We haven't seen each other for at least 20 years. I was like, you're insane. But now that happens as a result of a stroke, to people that I've known, well, that I've known and seen regularly for years. So that's kind of interesting. The part of your brain that basically stays broken is complex. So physically, you will, if you put the effort in, you will end up basically looking like you did before. You won't function like that though. And the secret is to not let it get you down and find ways around it. Hopefully you don't have a 3-year wait before you actually get answers as to what the hell happened to you. And hopefully you aren't left just to basically fend for yourself and try and recover being a human being by yourself while still trying to do everything else that you did in your normal life, because it's really not that much fun. But thankfully, because we had the pandemic, there wasn't an awful lot going on. Everybody couldn't go anywhere. I wasn't allowed to go out anywhere because I was clinically extremely vulnerable. So I just figured a lot of my issues with regards to speaking and stuff like that was due to lack of human contact, because teenagers, they couldn't really give a shit about having a conversation with their parent, especially when they're brain damaged. But no, it's actually just brain damage. One other thing, what's the other thing? Oh, yeah, you'll forget that you've packed your keys and stuff like that, and you'll be like, did I actually put that in my bag? No, I can't go out, I need to check that. Oh no, you did. Just stuff like that, stupid stuff that you'll be like, Jesus Christ, it's so frustrating. But, you know, at least you're checking it, so you definitely know you've got it. It only takes a few seconds, unless you put your phone down in one part of the house and then you're like, I can't find it. I've now got to search the entire place because I can't find that bloody phone. That will happen to you often, and not just with your phone. You'll lose items of clothing and stuff like that. So thankfully I don't live in a mansion, because I am quite certain I would never find some objects ever. And in fact, I don't live in a mansion, and I have failed to find objects that I've put down places. Like, for instance, a door handle. Half of the door handle, to be fair. I don't know where I put it, so I had to buy a new door handle, and then everybody moaned at me because I'd bought one that apparently looks too small for the door. And I was like, well, I'm legally blind, mate. I've got issues with that. And as long as there's a handle on the door, it's okay. So yeah, you'll mislabel objects. For instance, I would tell people about how I needed to go up the steps when I'm talking about the staircase. Or I'll say, I might need like my step ladder, and I'll say, can you just get me the stairs? What do you mean get you the stairs? They're attached to the house. I'm like, no, you know what I mean. And people will often I don't know what you mean. And actually that can be quite helpful, because you can kind of be like, okay, right, how do we get to this word we're actually looking for? Sometimes it just won't work. Maybe it will never work. But you won't know unless you keep trying. So, the cause of my stroke was bad luck. Bad luck and being put in minor injuries. Some people have problems with blood vessels, either in their brain, or they have a heart defect, or they take cocaine, which, by the way, they drug tested me at the hospital. They're like, do you take any drugs? I was like, no. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to run that blood test anyway. Let's find out. Turns out, no, I wasn't taking drugs. I was like, no, I don't do that. What are you on about? I'm in my 40s. I'm like, behave yourself. What kind of lifestyle do you think I'm living? So that's it. As you can see, there is hope. it takes time. It just takes time, and you're never going to be the same. And it might not be your fault. You might have just got unlucky. Your DNA might be a bit wacky and stuff like that. And there have been times in that where I have got upset. Yesterday when I met with this neurologist, I think because one, I'd never been given answers by the hospital that broke my brain, which we won't name, but we'll just call them Frimley Park. Then I was told I hadn't in fact had a stroke. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you gaslighting me? I'm like, Jesus Christ, I couldn't bloody walk properly for fucking months. I can't operate the way I used to. Something happened. Anyway, so then I asked my doctors if they could please refer me to a different NHS trust because I need a second opinion because I feel like I'm going fucking crazy. So my GP was like, yeah, we'll do that. So they did that. The doctor wrote back and was like, I don't know what you want me to do. It's quite clear that the parietal and occipital lobes are damaged. So, but if she has any questions, I'll gladly see her. I was like, okay, brilliant. So now I've just discovered there was 2 parts of my brain that were broken, and then I discovered then that explains why then I would have trouble speaking. That explains why I trip over objects on the bloody floor, because it wasn't just my peripheral vision that was all skewed up and everything like that. It didn't explain why I couldn't string sentences together and why I couldn't read and all this kind of stuff. And then this dude's like, there, that's exactly what happened. I was like, oh, okay. So then I asked like the GP, can I please meet this person? I have questions that nobody has ever answered for me. I think I'm entitled to that because you fuckers basically broke my brain and all I'm asking for is some answers. GP's like, no, unnecessary. We'll send you for physical rehab. I'm like, what are you talking about, you fucking donkey? I've done all of that. I've got questions about what's going on up here. Not what's going on with my arms and legs, you stupid fucking goof. I didn't say any of that to be honest because I would have been struck off, but trust me, I was definitely thinking it. So eventually, after much battling with GPs, I was like, look, this dude says he will see me, so fucking let me see him. And so that's how then I ended up with an appointment in 2023 after getting that letter in 2021. Not impressed. And he was like, everything you've described is exactly what happened. He actually said, I don't know why you think you didn't have a stroke. He said that maybe that you misread the information that they sent you. They may have, when they rescanned your brain, found no scarring, but you often don't find scarring. I was like, okay. The problem with that is I had telephone conversations with them where they said, you haven't had a stroke. So I was like, you can kind of understand why I might want to find out why I'm suddenly retarded. So no, it's all been explained, and that's it. And I hope that was helpful. It's probably my longest video ever. So congratulations if you got to the end of this. I've now got to remember to put various hashtags in or something so people could actually find it. Good news. Should finish on some good news really, in that because there was no identifiable problem with my inner workings, I don't have an issue with my heart. There's apparently no issues with any blood vessels or anything like that. The likelihood of me having another stroke is very, very small. But it's always going to be there, which is why people like us make the most out of every day. That means we do really good things for people, and that also means, in my case, you will also do really bad things to people, but only if you feel they deserve it and if you can get away with it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.